Most women think that self-worth is a feeling, and it isn't. Self-worth is a decision. And if you're waiting to feel worthy before you set boundaries in general, in friendships, and particularly when it comes to navigating men, then you could wait forever. Okay? A lot of the time there is this real challenge for women around feeling self-worth or worthy within yourself, okay, and assigning value to yourself. We live in a world where from girlhood onwards, okay, your worth is measured and assessed externally. And often for young girls, that worth is centered in purity, chastity, modesty, often silence, obedience, being nice, being polite, being compliant, being good. And actually, as you grow up, if you don't receive the rewards, okay, approval, praise, applause for being any of those things, you will question your self-worth entirely. Okay, it's one of the core issues on a human level, quite frankly. A lot of the patterns and behaviors that we have as humans can actually be rooted back to how healthy our self-worth actually is. And I get a lot of questions about how people can feel, specifically women, can work on their self-worth, particularly when you get to a point where you recognize maybe you are making repetitive decisions around who you choose to date and partner with. Look, the entry point for a lot of women, the trigger event is often related to men, especially if they're heterosexual, of course, right? This is one of the areas of life, the domains in life that really reveal things about ourselves to ourselves. And so a lot of women, it is often maybe a few heartbreaks, back-to-back dating mishaps, etc., where they start to explore what the root issue could be. And look, people are always too willing to blame women for everything and ask women to assume fault and responsibility for the choices they are making when it comes to men. And so this is a question that comes up a lot, especially in the group coaching that we do when we are exploring invisible contracts. And the thing is that if you're waiting to feel more worthy, generally speaking, it doesn't really work like that, okay? Usually feelings and presence in your body, a state of being, follows evidence, practice, and that starts with making a decision. I get asked quite often, Ashanti, how is it you're so sure about certain things? Okay, where does your confidence come from? Now, yes, there are certain skills that I'm confident in, but actually what is grounding for me is having a healthy sense of self, i.e. some self-worth, and having solid self-esteem, and then also being competent. And so because I always lean into competency and functioning like an adult psychologically, that takes practice. And as you practice that over time, it builds up evidence. And then the feeling comes along later. I do think sometimes as women, we spend too much time pontificating and discussing what the root causes of something could be. And I think the reality is it can be everything, nothing, and something. Our childhood is always usually relevant and significant, but actually we have to get to a point, particularly as adult women, that we make a decision. Now, the reason why I love that word decision, when you look up the meaning and the kind of makeup of the word, it really means to cut away, to cut off any other alternative. And I am a firm believer in this. You have to decide, and as a woman, you can get up any day, any time and decide you are worthy. You can assign yourself worth. You can assign yourself value. And then after you make that decision, because you're cutting off any other alternative, you're cutting off any other alternative, and that includes people and places who do not treat you in a way that aligns with the worth that you've assigned yourself. What happens is the more you practice that, you widen your window of tolerance in your nervous system. And You keep practicing. So even when it's uncomfortable, even when somebody doubts you, even when someone questions, pushes a boundary, you widen your window of tolerance to still hold that state of being and the way you see yourself and the worth that you have assigned to yourself. Because the truth is, not everybody and hardly anybody wakes up feeling confident, valuable, desirable, worthy every single day. And on that note, let's talk about this desirability thing. Because even if, look, you're a human being and you desire to be desired by a man or whomever you are attracted to, first and foremost, you need to have a solid sense of self. You need to have self-esteem. You need to be desirable to you. The part of the problem, and it's very common and typical, is that when we do have these voids within us, when we have a sense of lack within us, when we are subconsciously seeking and yearning the validation from somebody else, what happens is we're likely to compromise. We are likely to betray our sense of self and accept and tolerate treatment that is not acceptable, that is not dignifying, that is not edifying. And we will justify it, we will rationalize it, we will explain it away. And the truth of the matter is, because self-worth is a universal issue and challenge, regardless of gender, human beings are always questioning their self-worth. Okay, primarily because, again, we live in a world of systems of power that don't function based on you having a good sense of self. Okay, they function because we are constantly deferring our authority, our identity, how we see ourselves to these systems. We're obeying all of these invisible contracts. And so if you're looking to other people sometimes to affirm or validate your self-worth, that's not going to happen very often, right? You might have friends or family members who are genuine and sincere, who try to encourage you and support you in that. But generally speaking, everybody's struggling with self-worth in one way or another. And do not be confused by people who appear to be confident. That is not the same as having self-esteem and a healthy sense of self. They are still different things, okay? And so, therefore, acting first from a place of deciding that you have self-worth and you have self-value is your best route to go. And then allowing the belief to catch up, okay? Because they are two different things. Beliefs are often about what feels true to you, whereas a decision can exist regardless of your beliefs. People decide to do things all the time that sometimes don't even align with what they say they believe, right? And so it's really important. I think we need to cut to the chase sometimes. We need to be decisive, right? We need to lead ourselves. We need to be functioning like adults psychologically until the feeling catches up. Because the truth is, it can be a bit of a continuum. It can swing like a pendulum. There's going to be some areas in life that you think, right, okay, I see my value. I know my value. I'm rooted in my value, maybe in career. But then, yes, when it does come, okay, in your career, but when it does come to dating men, it seems like you fold like a deck of cards, right? So you have to be very clear. Okay, and you have to assign yourself that value when we become adults. We have to do the work and just assign ourselves the value and operate and move from this place, okay? Because the world is not going to assign you more value than you assign yourself. And quite frankly, misogynistic men will not do that either, okay? Really and truly, okay, the truth of the matter is, especially for misogynistic men, they are often looking to see how you see yourself. Why do you think they say things like, if you respect yourself, I'll respect you? They're really observing you to see how you value yourself. They're data collecting all of the time when they interact with you. Now, that isn't to say that you can earn a man's respect. I talk about this a lot. Respect is always a choice. There's nothing you can do as a woman to earn a man's respect. That is a lie from the pit of hell. It's a myth. It's a ruse, a snare and a racket for women to believe that you can earn a man's respect. They want you to believe that. because that keeps you seeking, keeps you yearning, keeps you working, keeps you earning. You see, you're eager, earnest, trying to get them to respect you. No, no, no. It's always a choice. They either respect you or they don't. And that is borne out from their actions. And so you have to realize that ultimately, a lot of the time, what people are observing is how you see yourself and how you treat yourself, and the expectations you do or don't have of them. Okay? And this is the reality. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to be manipulative or play games. One thing I'm not for is a lot of this kind of femininity coaching and, all this dating malarkey. A lot of that is really manipulation. You cannot control, like I say, whether somebody chooses to respect you. You cannot. And if you have used manipulation to get somebody's attention or get them to select you, you can only expect manipulation in return. Okay? So it's really about you practicing assigning yourself self-worth. And that can be done in little ways on a day-to-day basis. And I wouldn't recommend even trying to start this actually initially when it comes to men. There are plenty of other areas in life on a personal level. And remember, we're always talking about patterns here. It's very rare that somebody who does not demonstrate and exercise a sense of self with men in dating is not, that pattern doesn't exist in other areas of life. Okay? And so there's often something much deeper. And so you can practice this in other places in your life as well. But it is about deciding and reclaiming authority over how you see yourself regardless. And I do think that, look, it is obviously a very typical common desire to want to date. And therefore, it's understandable, I think, for a lot of women that you are constantly measuring yourself in relation to men and dating. But I do think that overall, if your interest and enthusiasm for self-improvement only exists because you want to be chosen, you will be disappointed, because there's no amount of self-improvement you can do to guarantee that a man chooses you and to guarantee that when you get chosen, you are being chosen and respected and honored and cherished. There's no guarantee, actually. And the problem is a lot of women who do sometimes embark on these self-improvement journeys. It might be the external in terms of beauty and body. It might well be some internal work, and they do it only because they want to be chosen. It's the same old thing with the women who go down the modesty. They go on a modesty pilgrim, as it were, because they want to be chosen by a man. Now, don't be obtuse in the comments, because I'm not saying that the only reason that some women choose to be modest in their dress and grooming is to be chosen. But that's the very point, you see. Modesty is more than your dress and grooming. And a lot of the time we see patterns over and over again where essentially women are often trying to kind of solve the puzzle. They want to solve the Rubik's square. What can they do? What is the magic formula? What's the secret sauce to being chosen? And if that means, therefore, they need to work on themselves, they will. And there are a lot of young women, I have to say, who really, to be honest, have courage to come online often. There's one young woman who talks about singleness and her disappointment and grief and sorrow at being single. I think she's 30 and she never imagined she would be single. But she literally says she did all the things, all the self-improvement things, worked on herself, and still has not been chosen or found a partner. And so I do think that there should be some caution around only embarking on that kind of journey and working on your self-esteem to get chosen. Because actually the healthier thing to do is to be whole within yourself, okay, and want to develop a good sense of self-esteem and self-worth as a whole individual, and not just in a quest to be chosen by a man, okay? It's very common that women do go on that journey maybe after a few bad experiences with men, but it can't be inextricably linked to that, because one, you won't sustain it, because this is it's a never-ending journey. If you're somebody who's genuinely interested in, improving who you are, becoming what you deem to be a fuller expression of yourself, that's never going to end, regardless, of course, of your relationship status. And so decide what your worth is, because if you're waiting for anybody else to do that, if actually you being chosen for you would be a sign that you now have worth, that is problematic. It's papery thin. You're building house on a sand, because it then means that if somebody breaks up with you, changes their mind, they're not who you thought they were, or evolves as a human being, and it's no longer working for you to be in that relationship, it means that your sense of self is now precarious. It's on the line. And you should never be in a situation like that as an adult human being. Your sense of self, your identity should not be impacted on a fundamental level by somebody else and their actions and their decisions around you. No, no, no. That shouldn't be the case. This is why I encourage you to download the Invisible Contract Framework. It's completely free, but it's a great start in terms of looking at and identifying some of these invisible contracts, so that you can start to work on your sense of self and reclaim your rightful authority over your self-worth.